What's up guys, my name is Dean, aka the Blue Crusader, and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll be showing you how to play Rust as a newcomer. The first time you play Rust, you'll have to consider how you're going to learn. I'd recommend playing either an official server with a lower player count so you have less danger, or pick one of the community servers out there. There's community servers that are solo and duo friendly, meaning you'll most likely run into solo or the most duo players instead of those huge clans or teams. This makes it easier to learn and the chance that you'll die far lesser. For the footage of this video, and also my main recommendation for you, is to play on a community server which has 10 times resources, or one that generally gives you more materials. These servers with higher rates makes it easier to gather from trees and rocks, and looting from containers will give you more resources. For an example, if you play on a 10 times server, you'll get 10 times resources from all these nodes. This will cut down the playtime immensely so you can just focus on learning the game. It also makes it less frustrating when you die and lose everything, which you're going to do, and it makes it easier to commit to keep playing and enjoying the game as a beginner. One thing to note though is if you do play on a community server, most of the servers won't let you get achievements like you can on the main official servers, so if you're looking at getting the first achievements in the game when you first play, maybe avoid the community servers. On the first day you'll drop somewhere random on the map. Your first day in Rust is pretty dangerous, and not only do you feel naked, you literally are, and there's probably tons of people running around trying to bash your head in with rocks or trying to impale you on spears. Your main item for resource collection on Rust is your rock. You can collect stones and craft another one if it breaks, so you don't have to worry about losing it, although you will need it to gather things, so make sure you have one on hand. If your rock does break, you can actually gather stones by picking them up off the floor, which you might find scattered around the map. This is of course if you don't have a pickaxe already to actually mine the stone rocks. Just like Minecraft, you can hit trees with this stone to get resources. You'll first need to find a bunch of trees and hit a tree and get some wood. Get at least 115 wood to start off because Gary said so, and that's what the Rust tutorial tells you to do. Next up is getting cloth. This is important for sleeping. You can get cloth via two ways in Rust, one being from plants, which is my personal favourite, and the other being from animals, which requires hunting. To get cloth from plants, you'll need to find little green plants called hemp, which spawn around the map, which you can find in fields and also near trees in forests. For food, you'll need to gather somewhere around 3 to 12 raw chicken breasts, which you can get from any animal via hunting. It should be sunset time around now or the next day, and now with all your newfound goods, you can craft a few useful items, which is going to be important. First on the crafting menu, you'll need to craft the blue paper item, which is the building plan to start building your base. You need this for the foundations and base parts. You can right click with it in your hand and pick your blueprint, and then you can now construct a basic wooden shelter using around 50 wood using this with a door frame. If you forget to make a door frame, make sure you destroy the piece and make one before it expires. At some point you won't be able to destroy the wall piece and you'll be locked in your base. This is a frustrating thing which I did as a beginner player on Rust, and it's definitely not fun. Next up will be crafting and building the base. I'd recommend building somewhere safe, either in the mountains, deep in the forest, or somewhere just generally away from the main road and open areas. In forests, other players may find your base when they're looking for wood, and also the mountains may be too cold and far away from resources, so these are downsides that you should consider when you're scouting out for a base location. Make a wooden door to put it in the door frame so nobody can come in your base, but you will actually need a lock on this door, which I'll cover momentarily. Then build a wooden storage box to have a few slots to store your items. There's not much space in them, but they're pretty useful and it's good for an early game place to put things in. You can also make a small campfire inside, which will provide warmth, especially if you chose to build in one of the colder areas like the snowy mountains or just a general cold area to build in. You'll definitely need to do this early. Then use your cloth to craft a sleeping bag and give it a name by pressing the use key on it. This will give you a respawn point if you die. You can use this spawn point on a 5-minute cooldown to teleport to your base if you die, and you will die a lot in Rust, trust me. You can now build a lock for the door. If you have some wood left, use it. If not, get some more. For 100 wood, you can make a basic key lock, which you can put on the door to lock it from other players. Interacting with it lets you lock and unlock it. Even when you locked it, you can still open and close it, but other players can't open it, providing that you leave it closed when you leave your base. If you collected food by this point, you can use the fire now to cook the chicken or meat in the slots for food. If you haven't done so at this point, you should also acquire enough stone, wood and other materials you may need in order to craft an axe to gather wood quicker, and also a pickaxe to mine stone nodes. You can use a pickaxe on the stone nodes to gather stone, and also on veins to gather ore. When you hit a tree, make sure to hit the small red crosses which appear on the wood bark when you hit it each time. This gives you more resources per hit and means the tree will offer more wood before it's exhausted. When mining a stone or ore vein, there's a similar feature in which the rock will shine in a specific area of it, where you can then hit this and gain more materials too. You should also gather enough materials to build yourself a furnace. You can use fuel on the bottom row and ore that you gather on the top row to smelt them. This is important to craft higher grade materials. Although you can craft fuel, you can also find it in barrels which are located on the side of main roads and looting areas. This is an easier way to find fuel without crafting it. You should also consider crafting a wooden hammer. You can use this hammer in the first few minutes of constructing something to destroy it, use materials to right click and upgrade your walls or base pieces to a higher grade, offering more protection from players, or use it to repair damaged or broken segments. You should focus on upgrading the first wooden stage of your base to the second wooden stage, and then stone tier to prevent lower tier players from easily getting into your base, as the first wooden twig level of building is extremely weak. Your base will naturally decay and it will need to be repaired. To prevent the decaying of your structure and rust, build a tool cupboard in your base and fill it with the required resources it asks for in order to protect it for a certain time. The more resources you put in, the longer your base will be protected against the natural decay. You may need to do some more gathering though for this. This is super important if you want to keep your base the next time you log on. It's also important to note that Rust servers will wipe at a certain day each week. You can always ask the other players in the server when the wipe day is, or see it on the server information before you join the server. A wipe day on Rust basically means that the server will completely reset and everyone will lose their progress one time each week and you'll have to start over again. This is a great time for a lot of pro players on Rust because this is a time where they can start over and get ready to become the first strongest team on the server to raid. So let's go over a few random tips now that we've covered the basics of the game. The first night should be over at this point, or if you're a beginner, this may take a little bit longer. Some players will be attracted to your fire at night as it stands out, so it's best to cook food before nightfall and don't leave a fireplace just standing out there in the woods for everyone to see. Don't open your door to players asking for help or for food. A lot of the time they'll just act friendly to lure you out and then they'll kill you and steal your things. Players trying to break in shouldn't be a problem because it can take up to 20 minutes using a rock to break your house. This time might be sliced in half though, depending if they're using tools. However, if your house is a beginner one, it's unlikely players would waste C4 on a wooden house, which would actually instantly blow up your door. If players do linger outside or try to break in though, stay static and don't move. This might send them off your trail if they think that you're offline or away from the base and they can't hear footsteps, and if it's a small base, it's probably not worth their time to wait around. But there's definitely those players which will just camp for half an hour to wait until you come back. Many attacks will cause you to bleed on Rust, so don't waste your first cloth bandages on health loss, as you'll need to save them to patch up your wounds when you're actually bleeding. This is because bandages on Rust don't actually directly recover your health anyway. That's what medkits are for in this game. You can sit by a campfire to gain the comfort buff, which will regenerate your health over time, providing that you're not hungry. Hunting is important to get resources on this game. Some animals are tough and can really damage you if you don't have much protection. It might even be a good idea just to craft the most basic wooden armor to defend yourself a little. You can get cloth from animals and other materials like chicken breast, leather, animal fat and blood too, which are used in some of the other recipes in the game. There's a few different animals in the game, like chickens, deer, boars, wolves and bears for an example. Each will have different attacks and ranges, and they'll either be aggressive or passive, which is mostly self-explanatory. You can use strategies like using a rock on an animal to disorientate it, and then using a spear which has fairly decent range. Hunting bows are also useful against faster animals like deer that seem to run away, and they don't take much to craft them and their arrows either. Killing wolves and bears may be slightly tougher and it might require more than one player to do so. If you're stepping in irradiated areas, you will get radiation and begin to lose health. There's times where you're just randomly looting the map and searching around and you'll accidentally walk into a radiation zone and you'll just die and lose everything. You can loot radiation pills out of barrels which are on the side of roads and in loot containers in buildings to prevent deteriorating and dying from radiation. Radiation is prevalent in a lot of irradiated loot spots and towns, so you really have to be careful with this if you don't know the game. Now that you've learnt the bare bones basics of Rust, you'll come to the realization that you'll most likely be killed repeatedly by other players and clans and raided and looted when you're online or even offline, logging into a destroyed base and considering whether you should bother even starting over again. This is why I suggested to play for your first time on modded servers, because you can easily lose everything and just start over without any regrets. If I missed any other cool, interesting beginner tips or useful advice that I may have not featured here that other players will find interesting, then make sure to comment them down below if you're a long time player of Rust. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.